Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the special city council meeting for Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. Let the record show all councilors are present with the exception of Councilor Schweiberger and Councilor Hoffman-Sockman.
And Councilor Whitney.
And Councilor Whitney. Thank you. At this time, we'll get approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Bayless.
Support.
Support by Councilor Fossil. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Move on to consent agenda. Authorize the mayor to sign and send the Public Utilities Commission request for public water utility extension up to the new mine view. Wishes of the council.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilor Bayless.
Support.
Support by Councilor Hildebrand. Any discussion? The only question I had is the time. Do we know when that would be accomplished at this time?
Construction of the
Yes.
extension. We're planning for this fall.
Okay.
I think the kickoff is September, mid-September.
Very good. So after the mine view is closed is basically the time frame we're looking at.
Correct.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. At this time, we'll move on to department and committee reports. City Administrator, Mr. Greg Krasinski.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Appreciate being in front of you this evening. Just to kind of get things rolling, the topic of the evening is our Hibbing Public Safety Center. And just to kind of get introductions out of the way, we have representation from Broughton this evening, and that's our architectural firm. Widseth is our engineering firm. Adolfson and Peterson is our construction management firm. And we also have a representative from RAP Strategies who is consulting on our local sales tax. And then our internal team, we've got Steve here, Eric, Jesse, Nick, Candy, Kelly, Christy, who's in our EMS, and then Kyle from our police department. Many of those folks are assembled here this evening. So just to kind of set the stage, what we want to do with you this evening, City Council, is give you a project update on the public safety building. Number two, we want to get some feedback as far as the presentation, and we'll talk a little bit about the building, some of the site, some of the cost analysis. And then we also want to give you the opportunity to ask questions in the context of National Night Out, which will be next Tuesday. We want to be able to talk with our residents, have a display there, and create some energy and some excitement about the project and the local sales tax and kind of all the things that are going to happen in the next several months to bring this project to fruition. So we'll touch a little bit on what's been done to date. Space needs, we did some analysis when it comes to that. Conceptual site layout, have some really cool block diagrams and whatnot. And then at the end, we'll have a time for some feedback, questions and answers. But also, I would encourage you, as we go through the presentation this evening, if you have questions along the way, please ask those. And we'll try to get those answered ASAP. So with that, I'm going to ask Jeannie to come up from Broughton, and she's going to do the main presentations.
Perfect, that's all visible to you all. My name is Jenny Schneider. I'm an architect and project manager with Brunton. And do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Corey Brunton, President and CEO of Brunton Architects. Honored to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us, and we're grateful for the opportunity to share with you all what our team has been working with your building committee on over the last several months. We've come together with Widseth and Adolfson and Peterson to perform a discovery period on your police department and fire departments in the efforts to determine the best scenario for a joint facility within the city of Hibbing. And so with that, our team has spent several days sitting down with leaders and members of each department, interviewing them to understand their departments, their operations, their function, and their space needs. Really understand how they currently operate and what they see as opportunities to improve that functionality. And then we've partnered that with our own professional experience in designing public safety facilities across the region, as well as touring other facilities as well, to make observations on their current facilities and recommendations. And so starting with the police department, in our conversations with them and in touring their facility by multiple members of our team, we have found that obviously the structure itself is not the issue. From the standpoint of the police department, square footage and function are the true concerns for them to operate to the maximum potential. And so this is an example of the report we're putting together, evaluating their facility. The facility itself, again, the envelope is not the concern. Flip to the next slide. We're evaluating the sites for each department currently. So the city shares space with the sheriff's department and law enforcement offices and courthouse currently. The site has ample square footage. The site itself has all of the available infrastructure. However, police vehicles are currently stored outside. There's no indoor parking, so they're left running year-round when they come to the facility, and then they also park across the street in the Health and Human Services lot. There's confusion on signage for the facility, on where the entry is, how to access the police department specifically, and so on. And flip to the next slide. And so a few examples of some deficiencies within the police department itself. The evidence storage room, for example, is on the lower level and is about a third of the size that the department requires. Weapons storage is also taking place within the evidence room. There's no dedicated evidence processing room with the adequate ventilation that space requires. And they don't have any refrigerated evidence storage for long-term evidence storage. The training room, for example, is not a dedicated training room, rather just an unfinished space where they hold training. That's also shared with riot gear storage, weapons cleaning table, and open to evidence processing. There's also no indoor vehicle storage for the police department as well. So as we mentioned, vehicles are stored outside. Their current fitness room is just taking over what was previously a locker room, so there are no dedicated male-female locker spaces within that facility. So all in all, police program, the square footage, we felt that in our investigation they required is about double what they currently have. And with the current facility that they are in, being owned by the county, there is not an effective way to remodel the current square footage that they have in order to improve that function. Either an addition on the current building would be required, but that would cause significant disruption to operations of both the police department and the sheriff's office. So with that being currently a facility and site that is owned by the county, that would be a significant investment on the city's part into a facility that the city does not own.
And onto that, even the garages would become the issue as well. So where to put those, how they would interface with the office concerns. So.
Okay. Moving on to the fire department, an investigation was done in 2016 by another engineering firm into the structure of the facility, and there are significant issues with that. The building is not insulated, the roof leaks, and there is water coming into the exterior block that is causing structural concerns for that facility. But first and foremost, not only is the building envelope inefficient and unsafe, the fire department has similar issues to the police department with square footage and function, but they also have safety concerns, not only due to the building envelope, but due to the fact that the building was designed for a fire department as they operated in the 1960s, rather than the current operations of a modern-day fire department. We flip to the next slide. From a site standpoint, there is really limited opportunity on the site to expand for the fire department. They currently only have one drive-through apparatus bay and one drive-through EMS bay, where typically in a new construction, we would recommend for efficiency in operations that all or most bays be drive-through, pull-through, and there's really no opportunity for that on this site. There's also limited space for expansion on the property and limited parking for a department. They also currently have 2 volunteer stations that are located elsewhere, whereas a new facility, we could join operations and improve efficiency. Some of the current issues that the fire department has, frankly, are accessibility issues. The bays are undersized for the current standard fire truck. So the department is faced with the need to order special equipment because the doors are undersized. The clearances between the trucks are too small and therefore can cause circulation concerns. And frankly, a lack of storage expands all of their stored materials into their apparatus bays, into their day room, onto the mezzanine, and is not readily accessible for their emergencies. Mechanical systems are not isolated. In a modern day fire station, we would see apparatus bays mechanically isolated from office spaces and sleep rooms for the safety of the fire department. Carcinogens and diesel exhausts circulate through that ventilation system and can cause major health concerns for fire department and first responders. So that is a deficiency in the current facility that would require significant overhaul of the current structure that would really be financially limited. Yeah, well said. So in our multiple interviews with each department, we developed a space program, assuming a shared facility could be an efficient solution to consolidate both departments under one roof. And what that does is it improves operational expenses can be consolidated from the city's perspective. It limits or reduces the required square footage for 2 separate facilities. They can be combined under one roof. They can share training spaces. They can share mechanical spaces, storage spaces, et cetera. And so overall, the city then needs to invest in less square footage when they're combined under one roof. And so when we developed this space program, we worked with both departments to determine what spaces they could share, what made sense for their needs, how we could overlap to improve and maximize that space. And so our determination, if you flip through, it is an extensive list outlining those space needs, but equates to roughly 65,000 square feet needed for a new joint facility. And now that is in list format. That is not the reality necessarily. It all is subjective to site location, size of site, dimensions of the site, et cetera. So that's just the first step. The next step in our evaluation was to review potential sites based on that determined program to determine their suitability for this joint facility. So when reviewing potential sites, we evaluated them on the criteria of safety, first and foremost, these being locations where you have multiple departments, fire, ambulance, and police, egressing for emergency response. So we need to consider overlap in that circulation as well as safety for the public when interacting with these departments. We also reviewed them for available infrastructure, space on the site to accommodate the program, and response times, their access specifically to the Beltline 169. And then ultimately, is there any disruption to operations is a huge question when evaluating these properties, because any renovation or addition to the current locations would pose that disruption to operations, and an alternative location would need to be considered for those departments in the meantime. And so we evaluated the existing public works site, the Hibbing electronics location, as well as the fire department and police department, which we reviewed a little bit earlier. Next slide. And so at a high level, the Hibbing's electronics site is limited due to an existing storm pond that is on the property. However, there are two different configurations that we felt in plan view could accommodate pull-through apparatus bays and separate departmental access in a safe way. There are other limitations, but we determined that it could be feasible. And there's another layout there. Without getting into the specifics, it could be feasible. Another we evaluated was the public works site, like I mentioned, and this site is much more challenging due to the existing operations of public works, due to the grades that are existing on the site, with the open lower level, higher levels on the south side of the property, and how to address those in order to achieve the proper vehicle circulation. And so because this site was a little bit more challenging, but did meet all of the criteria we mentioned, we dove a little bit deeper to really determine if this site could work functionally for each department. Go ahead, next slide. You can flip through these. We started with some simple bubble diagrams to understand, what adjacencies within the program, how they could lay out on really any site. And then we went through and refined those bubble diagrams into block diagrams. So what we determined is a lower level police parking garage would be feasible on this site with access on a private side on the north without visibility to the public. And this lower level could also account for all of their evidence storage, equipment storage, and our building mechanical spaces. First floor, which would be accessed on the south side of the property, would house the majority of our administrative spaces, police and fire and ambulance, as well as shared training spaces and a fitness room. All of the apparatus bays and ambulance bays would also be located on the first floor for emergency response. And so essentially, what we wanted to prove and determine with these block diagrams is how we can make the building as compact as possible to reduce ultimate costs. When you have a very compact building envelope, the building structure itself becomes more efficient, and we want to make sure that that could meet the expectations of the budget and the program. Next slide. The second level, again, trying to reduce the footprint as much as possible, could be fire sleep rooms and day rooms, as well as extra storage for mezzanine space. Go ahead. And so another request from the building committee was to start to visualize what the exterior of this joint facility could look like. And we really took that to heart to find a way to create a design that would be representative specifically of Hibbing. And so we took inspiration from some iconic city buildings, one of which we are in, the natural landscape and historic industry, and references from that materiality, those colors, and those structures that we see to come up with an exterior concept that could be, developed into a building design for this joint public safety facility. And so that design is one concept that we've come up with, illustrated here on the boards. We again took references from the cranes in the historic mining industry, tried to develop a design that would be representative and reference some of the history of the building, but also pointing toward more modern design touches and pointing the city toward the future. We heard that we want this to be a building that is welcoming to the community, accessible to the community, and visible. And so we took that to heart and really wanted it to feel warm and welcoming and visible. Next slide. And so here are just a few other images of what that concept could look like. Wanted a joint shared entry, and that was discussed with both departments as to how everybody could come into one location and be served by multiple departments. And so if the building were to go on a public works site, for instance, that could be shared by public works as well. There's a night shot. Not tonight. And there's a bird's eye, so you can understand the massing if this were to be an addition on the public works site. But really the layout of the building itself, with those space diagrams that we showed you, are not really specific to this site necessarily. That orientation could work on another site with the right dimensions and square footage available. But see, on the back of the building, you can see how the grades could be adjusted to accommodate the proper vehicle circulation while still allowing the Public Works Department to operate as they currently do. There's the current view from 169. And then there is a view of what it could look like from 169. So again, even though the building is set back a little bit from the Beltline, we could even wrap around the existing Public Works building as an option to help make that look like one coherent, unified design. And then some sketchy images just to illustrate and point out to you all that we are not done at all, and this is a first pass, and we're looking forward to more feedback from the building committee, from you all, and from your community as well as to what this facility could evolve into going forward in design documents and ultimately into construction. So we like to conceptualize, but also know that there's more to be done. Yeah, and that's all I have for you all. We wanted to share an update with what we have done so far. We are generating a report that has all of this information spelled out much more in depth, and that will be distributed to you all in the coming weeks. But does anyone have any questions for our team initially? Otherwise, Adelson and Peterson has more information to share.
The one thing I heard is, when you started, is about 65,000 square feet. When you say 65,000, that's for all three levels combined, I would assume. What would the main level be? I mean, what is the breakdown of that at this point? And I'm sure this is a starting point. This is with everybody's wish list. But I was just curious what the breakdown would be.
So
Right there.
the lower level is about.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I can read it.
You read it.
The lower level right now is about 19,300 square feet. Level 1 is approximately 35,600 square feet. And level 2 about 8,300
You
square
said
feet.
8,000?
Yes.
Okay.
So the program was 65,000 roughly, but the block diagrams got us to about 63,000. So there's additional refinement that comes in further stages of design to see if there are even other efficiencies we can find to bring that down. Are there any other questions?
Mayor,
Yes,
I'm just curious in the design of this, has there been thought put into the pathways of emergency vehicles coming in and out of that location? It seems like the public safety building location has been thought about the most. Is there been discussion around that, how the emergency vehicles can come in and out of there?
Yes, I'll go back to that plan. So in this illustration, you can see we've located public parking on the south side and to the west. Can I point? Can you see my mouse here? Perfect. So public parking all along the south side here with a shared public entry located right off the south. Then we've developed a separation that could be just a landscaped element, potentially a memorial, plaza, whatever, that isolates the public from departing ambulance and fire apparatus that could come out on their own access point to 23rd Street. And then these bays back in, on level 1 still could be additional ambulance and vehicles that fire does not use as often for emergency response. Then around the corner on the lower level is where police could tuck in underneath and come in and out. And they can really circulate on either side to get onto 23rd Street.
Okay. And that's functional for both departments? Okay, thank you.
yes.
And in both locations, you did kind of due diligence on space study on both locations to where it wasn't gonna fit on either a remodel or a redoing of the space wasn't gonna fit for either fire or ambulance or police.
On either site, we did not take it to the level of block diagrams, but we evaluated the available square footage for each addition, not included in our presentation, but will be included in the study. And on the police side specifically, there is available square footage on that site, no doubt, and plenty of it. What is challenging with that site is the configuration of the existing building as exterior offices surrounding it. So any addition would require renovation of all those spaces, relocation of all of those offices in order to relocate them, or they'd go internal to the building. And the connection to those spaces as well is challenging. So we looked at it from a high-level square footage standpoint, but spent more time reviewing the sites that felt more feasible for the functionality of the departments based on our conversations.
Right, thanks.
And we also, Jay, looked at better speak into this, huh? We also looked extensively at the opportunities to place additions on the fire hall, and due to circulation requirements and turning radiuses and the amount of space that they need, quite frankly, need 3 times the amount of space they're currently in. It just wasn't conducive to placing an addition onto that building and renovating it. Back to the police station component, the challenges there of the ownership of that and putting money into that size of a renovation and / addition would be really challenging to try to find the ability to separate that from a property line perspective and try to even buy it. It would be extremely disruptive to operations as well, for the reasons Jenny was talking about earlier. So, and they're short by at least 2-fold for square footage, so.
Thank you.
One other thing I'd like to mention here, sorry, Jenny. This proposed yellow shape that was on the screen there, it's being illustrated as a building addition on the existing public works facility, but that building and design could easily be located along 169 on a fairly flat lot with a underground parking component that functions the same way those 3 floor plans are illustrated. And the building could look exactly the way it's illustrated in the renderings as well, kind of to your point. Mm-hmm. And so with the reason we dove into that was that we felt it had potential either on a new flat lot or as an addition onto the public works facility as well. That's why we spent the time on that, to vet that out. And by doing that, we took the 65,000 square foot space allocations that were in the programming document and found that we can actually get it down to 63, and we're optimistic we might be able to get it down lower than that. So we know that the square footages and the structure and the concept behind this are real and doable. And Patrick is here from A&P to be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Councilors, any other questions at this point? Right?
Thank you very much.
Strong work, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, go to the, perfect, great. Perfect. Yep.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Patrick Sims from Adelson and Peterson Construction Company, construction manager for the project. One of our main tasks right now at this point is to provide estimating services for the project to try to check the pulse of the budget, see where the project is tracking, ensure that it's tracking towards a budget that's been set. And even though at this point with the design at a 50,000 foot level, we understand that there's decisions that are gonna be made now based on the budget, based on the dollars. And so our team works very hard at taking a concept drawing like this, a block diagram, and really boiling it down to get down to a 5,000 foot level rather than 50,000 foot level, if that makes sense. And the way we do that is we work very close with Brunton to gain an understanding of what they feel is going into the building from a material selection standpoint, structure type, whether it's precast panels, if it's block and masonry, those types of things to make sure that we understand from a cost standpoint what materials we're pricing when we start to pull the estimate together. We also reach out to subcontractors, local subcontractors that do work on the range. And also we utilize historical information based on projects that we've constructed here on the range as well. So we feel the cost information going into it is very accurate and represents the right cost for the project. At this point in time, what we've been able to do with Brunton and our team from a cost standpoint, we're confident at this point to say that we're tracking, to report that we're tracking on the project budget right now, currently. As Jeannie had mentioned, we have a long ways to go with this project. There's a lot of variables out there that need to be discovered at this point. Obviously, the design is going to continue to get refined. And at each step of the design, between schematic design development and eventually into construction documents, we're going to provide another estimate, and we're going to go back through this process again of meeting with Brunton, understanding the project, making sure that the costs that we're putting out there on our estimate represents the materials that is going to be constructed. So again, a lot of variables to come, but we'll deal with those variables and those challenges as we go and include those with cost estimation process. So we did look at a new site as well, and that a new building on the site would also track towards that project budget as well. So if the city makes that decision, direction, we feel that the budget can support both options.
Very good. Councilors, any questions? I'm just gonna mention, you just finished up Chisholm's new facility.
Correct.
And how did that, that was a process too, and it seems like you did a nice job on that, coming through budget-wise. So how will that process, being a little smaller, of course, relate to our project if we move forward?
Well, I think the main benefit that we have on your project is we're involved earlier in the process. We were involved in Chisholm a little later. The design was kind of further down the road. So we kind of had to reverse engineer a little bit of the cost savings, so to speak, to go after some cost savings to bring that project back into budget, where we don't feel we're going to need to do that on this. We feel that at each time we do an estimate, we're going to bring the project on budget. We're not going to bring an estimate to the council that's over budget. One way or another, we're going to bring one that represents the budget. And Brunton is very talented, very skilled at designing to a budget, which actually makes our job much easier. Yeah, we're glad we're here at this point, sitting at the table with you all.
Yep. Schedule-wise, on a project like this, if the okay went forward and we got the green light, what is the time frame on a new project like this. Now, I know they would vary from a whole new building on a different site versus a remodel on two sites that we're looking at right now.
Yep.
Timeframe, what would a timeframe be from the green light to a completion?
Yep. So part of our estimate includes our general conditions to the project. That's our
Okay.
staffing, you know, the temporary toilets, the dumpsters and all that stuff, which is really driven by schedule. So we actually did lay out a schedule for this already. We're gonna be in between that 16 to 18 months.
Okay.
At this point. So give or take, in a perfect world, ideally, we'd like to have, 60 to 90 days on the front end of actually starting construction to have bid out the project, procure materials, especially if long lead. If we do precast, there might likely be a first bid package that would maybe include site work, precast steel, longer lead items, and have that time on the front of, before we actually put the shovel in the ground to have those materials ready to go. So, but construction, once the shovel goes in the ground, to answer your question, 16 to 18 months.
All right, thank you. Councilors, any other questions? Pat, thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mayor, City Council, as you can see, we've spent a lot of time, energy trying to bring to the City Council a building that's very functional, something that captures the essence of Hibbing. I think we've done that, even though those are conceptual drawings. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. That's the goal. So I'll give everybody a last chance. Any feedback, questions that maybe we can vet out and respond to? So with that, no city council action this evening, but if there are no objections, we'll continue to move forward, do the costing out of the project, prepare for National Night Out next week. We'll continue to move forward with site analysis and the preliminary engineering. So if you're comfortable with that, we can bring the meeting to a close and we'll move forward.
Hearing what Greg had to say, anybody have any other questions?
I do not, Mayor.
All right, hearing none, we'll move on to license and permits. Approve the 2024 transient merchant application of I Heart Cookies.
Motion to
Wish
approve.
of council, wish of the council. Motion approved by Councilor Passo.
Support.
Support by Councilor Hildebrand? Or was it,
Nope, it was Counselor Hildebrand for sure.
any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Could I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Mr. Bayless, ask for adjournment. Second?
Support.
Support by Councilor Fossil. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.